Well, we've lost a little time already. I guess the weather's kept one of our panel members from making it, and that's probably not too surprising. And I'm sure we lost some of our audience when classes come around, but hopefully in a few minutes the interest here will generate interest from outside, and the meeting will grow. In the meantime, I think we'll just make it as much of a kind of give and take discussion as we can. It's a rare opportunity we have to take a little time off from our regular academic programs and talk about one issue, really discuss it rather thoroughly. And that's what we're doing in these 3 days. And I think it's very useful to kind of focus our attention on a question that's as important as the status and role of women today. We could almost take off at any point women in politics, because that really, politics is the area which embraces, or at least touches, every other area of our life. As we can see, anything as intimate as abortion and the relation of a woman to her own sexual reproduction system has a political coloration when it gets to the question of abortion. So that politics is very broad, and we can take off at almost any point and go in any direction that the members of the audience want to go, and the panel members feel they have something to say. We're delighted to have with us on the panel today Jane Van Dusen, who is representing the Socialist Workers' Party, and Corinne Harbaugh, did I get it right?
Right.
Who is the newly elected National Committee woman for the DFL, and as well as being state chairwoman for the DFL. I guess I have to say nationally it's Democratic Party,
right,
instead of DFL. This was news in the paper over the weekend, so I imagine this is one of her first appearances
as National Committee woman.
As a National Committee woman. So we're delighted that she could take some time and come over. I think we'll let people make a statement, members of the panel, if they like to, and I understand Jane expected to do this, so she at least has something already on her mind, and when she finishes, I'm sure Ms.
Right.
Corval will have something to say.
I want to talk a little bit about the women's liberation movement and what it's saying, and what we in the Socialist Workers' Party see as the role of women in the political arena today. The women's liberation movement has made an impact on all areas of American life. Women are demanding equality in education, on the job, and equality in the political arena. Women are demanding that they have the right to control their own bodies, and this issue is central to the movement for female liberation. Women cannot win any of their demands until they have the complete right to choose when and if they will bear children. The centrality of the demand for women to control their own bodies is characterized by the reactionary abortion laws in America today. The struggle for repeal of all abortion laws has been taken up by tens of thousands of American women. Through an independent struggle to win the right to control their own bodies, women are attacking the very foundations of this society. And we in the Young Socialist Alliance and the Socialist Workers' Party believe that the women's movement must remain independent in order to remain viable and massive. Through mass action, women are organizing as a political force. This movement for abortion law repeal will speak for the millions who have suffered from fear of unwanted pregnancies, who've been killed or mutilated by butcher abortionists, all for the crime of wanting the right to determine when and if they will bear a child. Society has created many divisions among women. Women have been isolated from each other in individual homes, divided by class and race, and pitted against one another. A woman is told that if she is unhappy, there is something wrong with her, not with society. But women today are discovering that all women are oppressed as women and are developing a sense of sisterhood in the fight against that oppression. Black, Chicana, Puerto Rican, Native American, and Asian American women suffer the most from abortion laws. 80% of the deaths caused by illegal abortions occur among these oppressed nationalities. In addition, these women are often forced by racist judges, doctors, and hospitals to undergo sterilization. Therefore, the fight for women to control their own bodies must include the struggle against forced sterilization. It must also include opposition to any laws which deny women easy access to safe contraceptives. We are against forced pregnancy and forced sterilization. It is a woman's right and her right alone to decide. And it is because of this struggle for women to control their own bodies that the women's liberation movement has become a viable force within the political arena in America. With the presidential elections coming up, all of America's people are focusing in on politics, and all the politicians focus in on the people. For example, capitalist candidates capitalize on the mass sentiment of the American people. For example, as the anti-war sentiment grew in America, many of the candidates took this up as one of the major planks of their campaigns. Johnson started the war, and he's a Democrat. Nixon escalated it, and he's a Republican. Both McGovern and McCarthy voted for war appropriations, and they are both supposedly liberal and anti-war candidates. And now there's a women's political caucus that says it will get women into office, and women will surely fight for their liberation through taking political power. The Women's Political Caucus cannot do this because the very parties that they want women to enter are the very political parties that have perpetuated the oppression of women for years. The Democratic and Republican parties, both of which support the basic structures of this society, do not want to see a mass women's movement develop that can fight for power outside those two parties. Instead, they want to channel the new feminist sentiment back into the capitalist parties. Supporting these parties, whether their candidates be male or female, will only derail the women's movement and result in women casting votes for the very system that oppresses them. The Democrats and Republicans know the power of a mass independent women's movement, and they fear it. We know that power, and we welcome it. The Socialist Workers' Party is running a presidential campaign to end the war, to fight for women's liberation, and to fight for the liberation of black people and Chicanos. Our candidates, Linda Jennis and Andrew Pulley, will be in every state of the Union talking about our program and drawing thousands of youth closer to our politics. I think it important to mention at this point that in our 1968 presidential election, we doubled the membership of the Young Socialist Alliance, and we project that we will do that again this year. Our campaign is the only campaign that speaks to the needs of women, black people, Chicanos, GIs, students, and the workers in America. And ours is the only campaign that can provide the alternative to the unjust and oppressive society we live in. Think about this for a minute. The Democratic and Republican parties have murdered millions of Vietnamese people, and think of the struggle that they have put up for 30 years. Think about this for a minute. The Democratic and Republican parties have kept women tied to their homes for years and have butchered women because of the abortion laws in America today. Think of the struggle of women. Think about this for a minute. The Democratic and Republican parties have oppressed all national minorities for 100 years, kept them in their ghettos and their lousy schools. Think of the struggle of blacks and Chicanos. And now think about this. If you cast a vote for a Democrat or a Republican in '72, you are continuing all the oppressive forces I listed above. I appeal to the human dignity in each and every one of you that you not vote for a Democrat or Republican. If you do, you have voted against struggles of the Vietnamese, the struggles of black people, the struggles of Chicanos, and the struggle for women's liberation. And each and every one of you will carry that with you. Eugene V. Debs once said, he was a socialist candidate in the 1920s, and he made this point. It is better to vote for something you want and not get it than to vote for something you don't want and get it. Make your first vote count. Vote Socialist Workers in 1972.
Thank you very much. You raised lots of interesting questions, but I think rather than going into questioning that, we'll have a presentation from Corinne Harbaugh.
Thank you. There's no doubt some of the things that you're saying are probably true, and I guess the reason I'm involved in the DFL party because I feel that it can be a changing party. It has changed since I entered the party 12 years ago. I am not going to stand here and excuse President Johnson or any of the people that you have accused, because more than right, you are right what has happened. And it is our party who did stand up and have a man who did state how he felt about the war, and President Johnson did pull out of the race. So these sort of things do have a way of changing themselves. The subject I'm talking about today, though, is about women in the DFL. We are taking a very honest picture of ourselves as women in the DFL. The right to vote is a hollow right without the opportunity of meaningful participation in the decision-making processes of the political party. The DFL for 1 year now has formed a DFL Women's Caucus that has been spending its complete time in finding out where women are and where we should go in the DFL. We did a study in May and found out the terrible picture that was presented to us in this study. In 1968, only 200 women were delegates out of 1,217. On the national level, as you know, the Democratic Convention in Chicago was a disaster. Only 13% of the delegates were women, although they are 53% of the population. Only 5.5% of the delegates were black, although they are 11% of the population. Blacks are even higher percentage of Democratic voters. For those who vote, 85% of those voted Democratic. Delegates under 30 were practically non-existent. 16 delegations had no voting members under the age of 30. Another 13 delegations had only one, and 8 state delegations had an average age of over 50. This kind of picture is why there was a mandate for reform in the Democratic Party. The McGovern-Fraser Commission has guidelines. It has been adopted by the State Central Committee of the DFL Party. It no longer will be this way. If delegations should not have these groups in representation in their delegations, they shall be challenged at all levels of the party. As the DFL Women's Caucus leader, we have gone into each one of our congressional districts around this state. We have had seminar meetings inviting all women who are participating now in the DFL, opening up to many more women who might come, and find out why this has happened to them, why they have let it happen to them. We have spent time on looking into what are the barriers of women, why they have not participated, and if we can help them in any way to see the way to participating, because it is not a meaningful participation if you are just doing the volunteer work, which women have done in our party for a long time. And we are trying to change this, and we have adopted that the McGovern guidelines